students. Hope you are doing well today as we begin our next topic, which is genetics. So let's dive right in and have some fun today with this topic, genetics. So let's begin with a simple question here and a picture. Ooh, not that picture. Let me head back to the picture I want to show you here. And that picture is this. What makes you you? What makes you you? I want you to talk about this for a few moments. What do you think the answer to this question is? What makes you you? You probably came up with a lot of different ideas and suggestions and thoughts about what makes you who you are. But today we're going to talk about what makes you you from a standpoint or perspective of genetics. So let's dive right in. Here we have a few different examples of characteristics or traits that are common in human beings. For instance, eye color. I don't know about you, but things with the eyes kind of freak me out. So looking at this picture kind of freaks me out a little bit. But when you look at someone's eye, let's see if you can see my eye here. What color would you say my eyes are? You know, different people have different colored eyes. That's one of the characteristics or traits that are controlled by your genes or your genetics. You could have blue eyes, you could have brown eyes, you could have hazel eyes, eyes with colors in between. I've even seen people with eyes of two different colors. That's all determined by your genetics. When I was younger, my eyes were really, really brown. As I got older, they kind of turned hazel. And now, as an adult, some people say my eyes are green. Some people even say my eyes are blue. What do you say my eyes are? I don't even know if you could see it that closely. But it also depends on how the light shines on them. But be that as it may, our eye color is determined by our genetics. What about hair color? Assuming you haven't changed the color using chemical dyes, what color is your hair? Your hair color is determined by your genetics. When I was younger, my hair was actually very blonde. I was very blonde when I was younger. As I grew up, it became more brown. And now the older I get, it's going back to blonde again. I'm becoming more of a platinum blonde. So, throughout your life, your hair color can change, and it's based on genetics. Skin color also. I mean, look at the variety of skin colors. From all the way on the left there, we have folks that are very fair skinned, and to the right, we have folks that are very dark skinned. And we've got a whole spectrum of colors from one side of the spectrum to the other. What determines your skin color? It is genetics. Genetics is what determines the different physical characteristics that you possess and you share with one another on the outside. So, I mean, look around right now, look around the room and notice these obvious differences that exist between us, which is all a matter of genetics. It's not like we chose before we were born, well, let's see, I want to have blue eyes and blonde hair. We don't choose that. We're born with that, and it's based on our genetics. Other things that are somewhat dependent on genetics include your intelligence or your lack of, or cuteness factor. Or silly things that we can do with different parts of our body, like our tongues. Some of us can roll our tongue and some of us cannot. And it's not really a skill that you can learn. It is determined by your genetics. So let me see if I can roll my tongue here. Let's see. That would be not rolling your tongue. And this would be rolling your tongue. I was born with the gene that enables me to roll my tongue. How about you? Can you roll your tongue? Pause me for a moment and let's do a little survey in the class. Who can roll their tongue like this and who cannot? And don't worry if you can't. It's not a skill that you can learn. It's just something that you're born with. So how many of you are tongue rollers and how many are not? All right, that was an interesting little survey. And some folks can actually do other things with their tongues. Check this out. We see, golly, I can't do all of those things. It's kind of fun to try. The last one there, the bottom right, I can kind of do that one. Let me try here. It's called the clover tongue. Am I doing it? I think I am. Clover tongue. I can't really do the first one. Second one, no. That is the third one. But the fourth one, I think I can kind of do that. Why don't you take a moment and play around with your tongues? Just don't touch them and spread your germs around, but see if you can do these different kinds of silly little tricks with your tongue, which are all dependent on your genetics. All right, here's another thing that is determined by genetics. It's not something you choose. It's whether your earlobes are attached or not attached. I remember when I was younger, I heard my sisters, they were part of Girl Scouts, and they used to sing a song, of course, their voices were a lot higher than mine, but do your ears hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? Can you tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow? Can you throw them over your shoulder like a continental soldier? Do your ears hang low? Or something like that. Haven't anyone ever hear that song? It's probably from an older generation. But anyway, do your ears hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? Do you have detached earlobes or attached earlobes? If I turn my ear and you look at just my earlobe, I think I have a detached earlobe because it hangs down. It doesn't go directly into my head. But what about you? Look at your earlobes. Look at your neighbor's earlobes, better yet, because unless you have a mirror, it's tough to look at your own earlobes. But look over at your neighbor and let them know whether they have an attached earlobe or a detached earlobe. So give it a little try. Give it a little tug. Don't tug your neighbor's earlobe, but see, do you have an attached earlobe or a detached earlobe? Boy, speaking of ears, there are a lot of different shapes of ears. In fact, it's been said that the human ear is as unique as your fingerprint. In fact, there are some organizations like the CIA and the FBI that have developed cameras that can identify you based on the shape of your ear. Because if you're trying to if you don't touch anything with your fingerprints and you're trying to hide your eyes, maybe your ear is exposed. Well, the shape of your ear is actually very unique. So if you look at all these different ears, There's a big variety of ears. Some people find ears fascinating. Some people find ears freaky. But do you know why humans have 2 ears and only 1 mouth? Maybe some of you got that question correct. It's because we should listen twice as much as we speak. You'll go much further in life if you're a good listener to others rather than just a gabber to others. So, a little bit of human trivia tidbit info there. So, your ears, very, very unique. So, we talked about the earlobes. Here's another couple on the bottom of this picture here. Widow's peak or no widow's peak with your hairline. If you look at my hairline, some people say I have less hair than I used to. I don't think that's true. I just cut it short. That's all. These apparent bald spots. No. If I let my hair grow long, it would cover them up very well. But if you look at the shape of my hairline, oops, here we go. If you look at the shape of, ooh, this is weird. All right, if you look at the shape of my hairline, it goes up on the sides here and comes down in the middle. That was really weird trying to do that looking in the camera. It makes me all confused here. That's funky. All right, anyway, so my hair comes down in the middle, comes up on the sides. That is called a widow's peak. If my hairline just went straight across my forehead, that would be no widow's peak. The next one here has to do with with your chin. Now, my chin is kind of hidden right now with some fur, but if I were to take this off, you would see that my chin looks more like this one. I don't have a cleft chin. Some of you may wonder, well, what is a cleft chin? Well, some people call it a butt chin. You know, you got 2 cheeks on your chin. A cleft chin is one in which you have like a vertical dimple down the middle of your chin. Some folks have it, some folks don't. All of these are genetic characteristics that you don't have any control over. You either have them or you don't have them. So pause me again now and look around the room and see if your neighbor has a widow's peak or a cleft chin. So we've got a variety of different people in the classroom here. This is one of my favorites. This is a cool kind of thing, a little activity that we're going to do right now. I'm sure that at some point in your life, you've been told to fold your hands and put them on the table in front of you and be quiet, maybe. Or maybe you did that as part of a game. Well, what I'd like you to do right now is to take your hands and bring them together. Make a fist with both of your hands together. And then look down at your thumb and notice which thumb, from your left hand or from your right hand, is on the top. When I do it, and I'll turn around here so you can see it, but when I clasp my 2 hands together, my left thumb is on the top, unlike the picture on the left. But maybe you have your right thumb on the top. Everybody has a natural orientation of how you clasp your hands together. Now, here's the fun part. Try to shift your fingers so that and watch me, you're going to shift your fingers so that your other thumb is on the top. And it is probably going to feel extremely awkward to you. So when I have adjusted my hand so that my right thumb is on the top, it feels like there's something seriously wrong. It just doesn't feel natural. So I got to go back and put my left thumb on the top. So take a moment now, do this little exercise, and let's take a little poll. Who has a left thumb on the top and who has a right thumb on the top? That's very interesting. Very interesting results in this class. We'll be doing this with the other class too. And remind me tomorrow and I'll report back to you what their results are. All right, here's some other funky characteristics of humans that are completely determined by your genetics. The hair on the second finger joint, or no hair on the second finger joint. What is this all about? Well, if you look at all of your fingers, you have different joints. This joint here is your first joint. This is your second joint. This is your third joint. Now, most people, and let me see, I'll just use my finger like this, okay? Most people's third joints are going to be hairy. Most people have hair on the back of your hand and on your third joint. Very few people have any hair on their first joint. But here's the weird thing. Some people have hair on your finger's second joint and some people do not. In fact, some people have no hair on any of your second joints. Some people have hair on all of the second joints, and yet some folks have hair on some of your second finger joints. So take a moment to look at all of your fingers. If you look at all of your fingers and your second joints only, I have hair, I don't know if you can see this or not, but on my right ring finger, it's tough to see, I actually have hair on my ring finger second joint of my right hand, but that's it. All of my other ones are bald, just like some of you are saying my head is becoming, although I'm not. So check your fingers and see if you've got hairy fingers or not. And work your fingers to the bone, and what do you get? Bony fingers. All right, so check your fingers now. Pause me and see who's got hairy fingers. All right, some of you may have had hair on your second knuckles, some of you perhaps not. Interesting. Now, this next one I think we should not do in class because although we probably could do this if everybody is wearing a mask, maybe it won't be that bad. Have you ever looked at your feet? And by the way, I'm not going to take my shoes off right now. But have you ever looked at your feet? You know, there are interesting things here about your toes. The image on the left-hand side shows that your second toe is gradually smaller than your first toe. But look at the image on the right-hand side here. Some folks have a second toe which is longer than your first toe here. That is a genetic characteristic. I happen to have a second toe which is longer than my first toe, which is not a bad thing. It's just a thing. That's all. In fact, some people at some point might have a terrible accident and they might have had their thumb cut off in a tragic accident. I've actually seen people who have had operations where their big second toe is removed from their foot and attached to their hand to give them a thumb back so that they can grab onto things. Now imagine picking your nose with your thumb that's actually your toe. Wow, now that's talent. I've seen some of you pick your nose with your finger. Not a very pleasant thing to watch, by the way, and it's not very sanitary or healthy. We have tissues to pick your nose with, so use a tissue. By the way, there's an old saying, you can pick your nose and you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your friend's nose. Now, even though you can do those, it's not really a good thing to do. Although it is a good thing to pick your friends, but never a good thing to pick your nose. So use a tissue instead. But what about back to your toes? Do any of you have a second toe that is longer than your first toe? It's interesting. It's interesting. Again, these are all things related to genetics. So let's do a quick genetic survey here as a class. And we're going to determine whether any of these characteristics that we've looked at are dominant or not in our class. So as we look at this genetic survey, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and fill this out as a class and just see how you are as a class and then discuss. So pause me now. All right, very interesting results of our first genetic survey. And so let's now move on to the meat of the material of this topic, which are, in fact, genetics. So what are genetics? Well, again, let me show you a little picture here of my daughters. My wife and I, a few years ago, we had identical twin girls. And this is a picture of them when, oh golly, I don't know, maybe they're in sixth grade at this time, maybe fifth or sixth grade. They were still cute back then. But here are my daughters, and they are identical twins, meaning they have exactly the same DNA in their bodies. Now, if you look at a picture of them, do you think they look alike? And if so, what ways do they look alike? See, now as their dad, I can totally tell them apart because I have spent their entire lives identifying all of the differences that exist between the two of them. So I can tell you that the one on the left is Kendall, the one on the right is Kayla. I don't even hesitate because I can totally see their personalities coming through their physical appearances. Here's another picture of them. Again, when they were younger, they're a lot older now. They were born in 2002, so they're 18 now this year. But there's my wife, myself, and our two girls. And I want you to look at this picture for a moment. Number one, say if you think they look alike or not. And second, if you think they look more like me or more like my wife. What do you say? Personally, I think they look most like each other rather than my wife or I. Hopefully, they look more like my wife because she's a lot more attractive than I am, and they are girls. So those are identical twin girls. But even identical twins, believe me, they are completely different from one another when it comes to personalities. So let's get into genetics in our notes now. On page 71 of our books, let's begin our notes on genetics. Genetics, generally speaking, is the study of heredity. And I have a picture here of a coat of arms, which is really the study of heraldry. Maybe some of you have a coat of arms or a family crest. I do. I actually, I should have shown you mine here. Maybe I'll show you a picture of one of my family crest tomorrow. But in order to have a family crest or a family shield, years ago, this was much bigger in medieval times. Oh, have any of you ever been to medieval times? And you eat with your hands. It's a great show, dinner show, although they're probably closed now. But during medieval times, the study of heraldry was very important, and your family lineage, your family line, who you are a descendant of, was like a big deal during the medieval times. And you would have a shield. If you were a knight, you'd have a shield with your family coat of arms on it, and you'd identify your family based on who you are a descendant of. That's where the word heredity really comes from. So genetics is the study of heredity. But that begs the question, well, what is heredity? Well, heredity is the passing of traits to your offspring, like those traits we were talking about earlier this period. Heredity is the passing of traits to offspring. And now that begs the next question, well, what are traits? Well, traits are the characteristics that we've been talking about all along. The characteristics of an organism. And this isn't just pertaining to human beings, by the way. These are the traits of any organism, but traits are the characteristics of an organism. Like for us, hair color, eye color, skin color, silly tricks you can do with your tongue, etc., etc. All of these are various traits which are characteristics, the specific characteristics. If you think about dogs or cats or horses or cows, different animals have different traits that are desirable. And those animals that I mentioned are called domestic animals, where humans over the years have selectively bred those animals in order to achieve certain desirable traits or characteristics. In fact, why don't we end our video here today with a discussion of some domestic animals that you may have yourself, and what are the traits or the characteristics that you prefer in those particular animals that you have. So we'll pick it up here tomorrow, but for today, I'm going to say bye-bye.